You're listening to another ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast, daily conversations with Christian entrepreneurs to inspire and empower Christian business owners to walk strongly in their faith, while build a thriving business that honors Him in every way. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast. This is episode 12. And yes, I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, brand and communication strategist, also known as the podcasting queen. Do you want to know the principle to success? Well, stay tuned because today's guest has some great insights to share with us. Joining me on today's show is Andy Skarda. South African born, he studied law, had his first directorship in 1990, and since then has run businesses in multiple fields on 4 continents. He's a grandfather of 4, father of 2, husband of 1, and he loves Rugby Union, Flyfishing, and anything to do with aviation or marine. Now, 5 years ago, Andy took stock of what he really enjoyed doing, and he launched an executive coaching business while running a declining media distribution business. Now, as a committed Christian for 25 years, he believes that every principle for success is found in Scripture. And Jesus was the ultimate coach while being the ultimate everything. Now, recently, Andy was appointed as the regional director of the Christian Business Network, which seeks to build a global network of believers in business on purpose. And he's also adapted Dave Ramsey's incredible financial peace university curriculum to be more internationally accessible and Australian focused to help people manage their money effectively in the 21st century according to biblical principles. Now, on today's show, Andy's going to share success in anything is determined by planning, leadership, and organization, values-driven vision, or values drive vision. Vision drives strategy. Strategy determines tactics and critical success factors. And serving others and relationships are the keys to business and personal success, and so much more. So welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you very much.
You've got an incredible background. And so you really were given so many different opportunities, which I'm sure you draw upon now when you're dealing with businesses and in your own business too. Looking back, what has been the greatest insight, do you think, that you've learned that you continue to apply in your business and that you share with others? I know that's a huge question, but sometimes when we look back, we can really see that there's been a really important principle that has really carried us through a lot of the challenges and successes, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big question, but I think really the reality of service as a foundation, if what we're doing is helping other people, which gives it real value, whether that's at a kind of major scale, as in our business idea is going to provide X, Y, Z services, or whether that's as simple as my role within this organization is to do the following, and in doing that, I serve the greater purpose. If we can get our heads into that space, which is not always easy, but that is the foundational attitude that we bring to work, I think is really the thing that underpins success generally.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think it's important to realize this because, as we know in business, there can be a lot of challenges that can be difficult. We can feel very much on our own. And so having a real success principle, something that we really turn to, I think, and remind ourselves of, can certainly be so very important. And the difference between continuing on and just being focused on what we are here to do and fulfilling our God-given destiny. So you say success in anything is determined by planning, leadership, and organization. Let's unpack this topic because I think it's so important, isn't it?
So, all right, there's a couple of big things in there. And I think that, as usual, with certainly the focus of this podcast, the best place to go to is Scripture, and nobody coaches better than Jesus. So I won't pretend that I came up with the concept. But if you go and look in the book of Luke, in chapter 14, there's a passage in Luke 14:28-30 where Jesus is talking about any of you who want to build a tower
Mm-hmm.
Must first count the cost before you start the construction, because if you don't, you may get halfway through it, run out of money, and then I think the word that is used is other people will ridicule you. Here's a man who started but could not finish. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's certainly, I wish I could say I'd invented the principle, but actually I didn't. The problem that I come across, that I realize even in a number of the businesses that I've been involved in and the people that I work with today, is that they have a very, very hazy idea of where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy is always drawn between, planning in your business and planning a road trip. You don't just kind of grab your car keys, walk downstairs, get into your car, drive to the first intersection, and then decide, I'll turn left. And you turn left till you get to the next. And it doesn't work like that. You sit down and you say to yourself, I've had enough of Sydney for a while. I think I need to get to Port Macquarie for a week. And you now know your destination. Now, knowing that destination not only allows you to handle the transport side of things, but you also know what sort of clothing is going to be appropriate. You have some idea of what it's going to cost to get you there in terms of whether you're flying, driving, training, walking, whatever it's going to be. You get some idea of the kind of money you're going to need to spend to live while you're there for the week. Mm-hmm. And if you're a surfer or a sailor or a camper or a whatever, you can work out what kind of equipment you need to take in order to get there. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know any of those things, we've got this wonderful thing that my wife Carla hates when I call it the interweb, but just because I can, I do. We can hit the interweb and we can research all of those answers before we ever leave. And the beauty of that is we can get into our car and drive away knowing that we know exactly the route we need to drive. We know exactly how much it's going to cost to get there. And if we that way inclined, we can build in some kind of contingency. And we know that we've got the right equipment in order to be able to have exactly the kind of holiday that we want to have. And the net result of that is we come back from that week's holiday refreshed, fulfilled, great bunch of pictures on Facebook, and everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. So that analogy taken into business, I'm shocked at how many people come to me looking for help. And when I say to them, what do you want to achieve? They're unable to articulate it. Stephen Covey has this wonderful statement where he says visions or words create worlds. All right. And I mean, if you go back to scripture again, the word, the Lord said, let there be, and there was. And I mean, if you want the fundamental example of where that happened, the book of Genesis will do all of that for you. But essentially, so much of what we do, we first need to be able to see what it is we want to achieve, see where it is we want to go, and then come up with the necessary steps to get us there. Analyze if we have the skills. If we don't have the skills, who can we employ? Who can we partner with? Where can we learn? Until we get ourselves to the place that we have a plan that we know we can work on. And the beauty then with the plan is not only do we know where we're going, but we can equally measure our progress.
Yeah. So very important. And I think why would you say a lot of people don't have that in place? And I'll share with you just some feedback in the career industry. I mean, I spent decades working with executives and professionals. Similar thing. What is your career management plan? What do you mean? I just turn up to work. You wouldn't go on holiday without a plan, and you laid one out so perfectly. If you don't have a plan or an idea at least, how do you expect to get there if you don't have that plan? Talk a little bit then about the leadership component. What are some of the things you see is lacking in that area?
So leadership by definition is once we know where we're going, we've got to be able to share the passion and the excitement, effectively the why. Mm-hmm. Why do I want to go to Port Macquarie? What is it that's going to motivate me to drive all that way, pack all that stuff in my car? What's the why? And the why has to do with that wonderful Australian word. Look at the serenity. Look at and it's whether you're into the beach, whether you're into, just getting into the country, if you're into the restaurants and the food and the cafes, whatever it happens to be, there is a fundamental reason that gives us the why we're going to do it. And if that's not there, and that why needs to be more, particularly in business, it needs to be more than money. You know, I can remember growing up, there were multiple stages in my life where I said, you know, if I could just earn X, I'd be made. If I could just add another $10,000 a year to my income, I'd be able to do everything I want to do. And guess what? You get yourself to that point, and surprise, surprise, you need another 10 and another 50 and another 60, and so it goes. And part of that is because I didn't have a plan. So I think that's also the disclaimer I need to make, is it's easy for me to sit now and talk about this. I didn't always do this, and obviously I paid the hard way in a lot of cases, lots of school fees for not having a plan. So once the plan is in place, that gives us the ability to sit down and effectively lead the process. And that leadership side is different to management. I find a lot of these days we've kind of moved through this process where maybe a decade or so ago they were quite clearly separated. We've now started to use the two terminologies interchangeably, and I think that's dangerous.
Yes. What would you share with people then today that could really help them see, if they have been interchanging both of those terms, help them clearly understand that this is leadership, this is management? Okay,
so to do that, let's jump into something else that you spoke about, which was vision. The leader of the business, and you can cascade that down to any level you like, the leader of the team, the leader of the department, has got to understand the overall vision of the business. Why? Why do we do what we do? And essentially, from a leadership perspective, leadership needs to instill passion and excitement. They've got to be the people that are constantly putting that why back in front of us, so that it's not just about money. It's not just about being in business. It's actually, now we're closing the circle, it's actually about serving others. Because genuine value only comes from me being able to make somebody else's life easier, better, quicker, cooler. Pick an adjective. If I'm not delivering something of value, I cannot expect people to pay me for that particular thing. So we're back to underpinning it all is, who am I serving and what do they need? And if I've got that in place, then I'm able to be generating the level of excitement and passion in the team that is designed to drive, and also a concept that just seems to be missing these days called engagement. And, you know, with your HR background, I'm amazed at the fact that we so often employ skill without looking at culture, without actually seeing whether or not the person coming in is enthusiastic and motivated by the reason that we're in business.
Yes.
Because they can very quickly end up, you know, kind of just sitting in a chair, clocking in, clocking out, doing the absolute minimum because they're not engaged. So that's the one side. Leadership really involves passion and excitement, and the engine that drives engagement effectively comes from the leader. The manager is there to make sure that competency and productivity are in place in order to serve that vision, and to make sure that you know, passion and excitement isn't only the annual go away to the Hunter Valley. That may generate some form of passion and excitement, but what we really want is, that's around that event. What we want, the passion and excitement that the leader is driving, is around the mission, or around the vision of what we're doing. Management gets involved with the mission, the how do we do what we do. So they are much more interested in competency, skill levels, training, development of capacity to do the work that is required. And then the other side of their coin being productivity. Are people producing efficiently at a level that we require them to, in order to achieve the vision, and out of the vision, the goals that we've set for ourselves? And that doesn't mean that a leader can't manage, and it doesn't mean that a manager can't lead. But what we've got to make sure is that, depending which hat, and I know in a lot of small businesses, you're everything. you you are all 7 leaders and managers, but even still the manner in which you go about the things you're doing and the focus, where you put the emphasis, will be determined by whether you are leading or managing. And I hope that makes some sort of clarity in terms of what I mean by the two phrases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for small business owners, when we start off in business, as you said, we're often wearing a lot of different hats. But as we continue to grow, then of course it's important to bring on team who are aligned with your values. And we'll talk about that in a moment, because I think that, as you said, it really underpins everything. But it's important to be able to be clear as a leader of your business on that vision, of your mission, of your values, so that you can continue to communicate that to your team. Yep. But even before the communication is to hire the right team, because then as a manager, when you've got the right people in the right roles and doing the things that they love to do and tapping into their gifts and skills and strengths, then a lot of that management is the overseeing, checking in, of course, but not that day-to-day where you're managing poor performance because you've hired the wrong person. You know, as a leader. So let's dive into this. Values drives vision, vision drives strategy, strategy determines tactics and critical success factors. We could have a dozen shows around this because it's such an important topic. But let's just share some overviews, because I think if we can alert someone to the fact that they haven't spent enough time in this area, this is great, because then they can go and obviously dive deeper in their own time.
Yeah, the difficulty and working in the coaching and executive development space now, I understand that a lot of organizations, particularly the biggest sort of corporate structures, spend a lot of money and time doing things that are partially successful for the right reasons, but because they're not really done properly, people come out, the end of the sort of corporate go away to do the strategic planning for the year is a formulaic thing rather than a cultural. It doesn't get massaged down to the cultural level. We need a vision statement. So what happens is the CEO has just finished his MBA. He takes the board of directors away to the Blue Mountains, and they sit in a room and they throw adjectives about their business onto a whiteboard, and they do that for an hour, and now they've got this list of things that they believe speaks about their business. And then they come back after tea and they try and shoehorn that into a sentence using as many of those words as they possibly can, and they come back to the office the next day and there is a memo sent out to everybody saying, we've come up with a revised vision for the business. And everybody goes, whoopity-doo. Yeah. And nothing changes. In fact, 6 weeks later... We'll just hang
that on the wall and never look at it again.
Yeah. 6 weeks later, if you asked any one of those people who were even in the room where it was developed, most of them can't remember it. So really what I'm not talking about that kind of vision. What I'm saying is, particularly for the leader, for the entrepreneur, he starts a business because he sees a need. He sees whatever terminology you want. There's a gap in the market. There is an opportunity for disruption. We can use the jargon, but at the end of the day, no business is going to succeed unless what they do fulfills a need, provides a service. So he sees that. The reality of his business is that while he remains the only person employed by the business, he doesn't really need to sit down and analyze the values that brought that about, because it's only him. But the truth is, I don't think a business can ever only be one person, because a business by definition says it is an entity that can run itself. Yes. And if we go back to what I said earlier, you need planning, you need leadership, and you need organization. And part of that organization is the people and the systems that allow the business to run so that the owner, in the worst case, can spend the 3 weeks in hospital that he had to have because he didn't go on holiday. Preferably what we'd like him to be doing is spending those 3 weeks in Europe because he can. And obviously we want the same for everybody else in that entire organization. But the point is, if he's not able to articulate his values and the values that underpin the service that the organization is delivering.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be incredibly difficult, now we're moving into your realm, for him to employ people of similar values.
Mm-hmm.
And the difficulty and the conflict that often comes in a business comes where there is a value difference that may not even be understood because our values are so deeply seated in who we are.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is my advice to any entrepreneur or business leader, before you go into business, or if it's too late, you're already in business, you need to go through an exercise with somebody where you clearly identify your values. Now, when I do it with clients, I get them to start with 20. I give them a list of 64 value definitions, and I say to them, you pick the 20 that you believe most apply to you. And they do that very easily. And then I say to them, all right, let's take those 20 and chop them into 10.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that with a little more difficulty. Then I get them to prioritize those 10, as in which is the most important. And then effectively we ignore the bottom 6 and we focus on the top 4.
Yeah.
Because if I can get your business functioning according to your top 4 values, it's no longer work.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
actually something that's going to energize you, and you are going to do it from a place of unbelievable skill because it's who you are.
Yes, yeah. And just something that you're saying here, just to emphasize for people who are listening or watching, and even to the recording later, this is so important. And from a brand perspective, knowing your values will also impact the experience you create as a leader in your business for your team, and ultimately your team and yourself with the clients that you serve, and even the experience that you create either online, offline, that kind of thing. And I think today, consumers, there's so much choice for consumers. They're about experiences, how you made them feel, how you interacted. So if you're not clear on that, you cannot possibly continue to communicate that. And even in your actions, your interactions, even by what you don't do, your inactions, you see your brand. And I think moving forward, because of now the technology we have, incredible, opens up opportunities to do business internationally, globally. And we need to be mindful of that. And it may just very well be, if you're so clear on that, what sets you apart from everybody else who unfortunately doesn't have clarity around this. And it drives you forward. And I think I so agree with what you've said around the why being so much more than money driven, because there are days, even when your team is, challenged and things can get tough. But remembering, why are we doing this? And it lights in us that passion, that drive that does pull us forward in situations where, okay, we've got to do this, do this. Yes? Yeah.
So, I mean, that value underpinning, that value clarity really allows you now to develop a vision statement for the business that is completely in keeping with who you are and why this is important. And not only does that become very attractive to like-minded people, but it beautifully also repels everybody who's not attracted to that. And both from an investor's perspective and a potential staffing perspective, I want people on my team who think and feel and react the way I would. Because if I don't have them, I spend my entire day fighting fires. And 90% of those fires are caused because either I don't have the clarity on the values, therefore I haven't got a clear vision, or even if I've managed to get to that point, I've possibly employed people who don't identify with those values and that vision, in which case they are literally there to do a job. They're not part of the team. They simply want to clock in, clock out, do as little bit as they can, and get paid as much money as they possibly can. And that's not going to help to drive my business towards success at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And just bringing this back then, and of course, we're bringing this in the context of Christian business. Sometimes if a business owner, leader of a business, isn't really aware on the values, skills, strengths, of a potential team member, they may find someone who is also a Christian and think, well, they're a Christian, so I can bring them on my team, which is not necessarily, not talking about that. Sure, you may have similar values, that, you're Christ driven and that's an important part of your life. But we're talking far more around the individual values that's a part of that too, and different skills. And just to give you an example, there was a time where an organization that I was working with, they pinpointed someone as being a real thought, or we won't use the term thought leader, because back then it wasn't, but a real someone who achieved their goals and was really driven. So what they did is they took him out of the team in Melbourne and put him up in Sydney to spearhead the creation of a new business. Yeah. They didn't realize that what made him alive was the interaction with people. So when they took him and put him on his own with no one to bounce ideas, he just completely crumbled. And they said, what's going on? Now, if they had taken the time to recognize the individual and the talents and what his values were and what he enjoyed and what really lit him up, then they would have realized that, well, putting him on his own, that's not the best place for him. These are the things that we're talking about. There's real incredible insights into that. So, and we've really just scratched the surface on a lot of these different things, but it's good, because a lot of times as business owners, we can struggle, and because we don't know that, okay, this can make a huge impact, we can then go back and say, okay, well, are some of the team members that I have hired, maybe they are in the wrong place, and I'm expecting them to do something which is not aligned with their gifts, their talents. Let's see if we can maybe place them in other areas in their business. All of this, as you said, is really around serving others, the relationships that we are building. I think a huge difference. Share a little bit briefly about how people can get in contact with you, maybe a little bit about what sort of work that you do, and then that allows people to reach out to you.
So I run a consultancy called Version 8 Coaching and Training. It's online at version8.com.au, and there's a Facebook page that goes along with it, and all of the other bits and pieces. I'm based in Sydney, but I do a lot of executive development work, as in either individual career development, or probably where I do the bulk of it is businesses that have got themselves to a point that they don't know what to do next, and people with ideas that want to get up and started. And effectively, I take them through with the last category. I'll take them through an incubation process that effectively allows them to almost laboratorize what they want to do before they step away from their well-paying corporate gig and get themselves deeply into debt, which is one of my personal bugbears, and then end up with a problem. We can, these days with technology, we can simulate a lot of what's going to happen, and that allows us to kind of come up with a really comprehensive business plan, which requires all the things we've been talking about. To complete the plan, we've got to look at values, we've got to look at vision, we've got to determine strategy, we've got to come up with the tactics. We then look at the financial implications of all of that, and we can then say, we believe that, conservatively projecting our income, it'll be this. We have quite aggressively projected our expenditure, it's that. Income is greater than expenditure, therefore we have a business. Boom. And that document that they take away has been used for multiple things. One, as a handbook for them to actually employ people and get the business up and running, et cetera, et cetera. In other cases, it's been the document that has landed them the necessary funding from an investor, because the investor is able to look at all of that detail and data and go, I'm comfortable to invest money into this, because guess what? There is a plan, there is some vision, there is a mission, there's some strategy, and I can see that the numbers stack up. So that's kind of on that side. A lot of other people end up in a place where they are technically excellent in a particular field. And let me just use the example of a pharmacist. A pharmacist ends up with a degreed qualification that, although there is some element of it that looks at running a business, the bulk of it is really looking at safely running a dispensary. So he understands medicines and all of those things, and he understands what should work with others, and he's really, really good at it. But he's never employed a person in his life. He's never done a press release. He doesn't understand marketing. He has no real idea how retail works, et cetera, et cetera. What happens in most cases is he'll work in a pharmacy for a while, and then he gets to the point that he'd like to launch his own business. And he either does it without any help, and if he's fortunate and tenacious enough, He may be able to battle his way through a decade, learning as he goes, and then he comes out the other end battle-scarred, experienced, and he continues. Or he goes and does an MBA, which is a wonderful qualification, but is going to take him 3 years, cost him $100,000, 3 years minimum, $100,000, and may not even help him run his pharmacy. I step into that place and say, instead of you doing any of those things, let's take 3 to 6 months. Let's work together on making sure that we identify the skills you have, so you know what you're good at and you work within your sweet spot, and then let's work out what you're not good at, and let's contract that out or staff your business with people who are skilled in those areas, so that together as a team, you increase your chance for success.
Yes.
And then the final level, as I said, is the executive development, where either people who are in non-supervisory or management roles but would like to be, I'll take them through the fundamentals of management and supervision, or in some cases, people who are and are wanting to make sure that they are skilled and available to move into a more, C-suite type role. And then there are people like me. I remember being promoted into positions because I was good at other things. I was promoted into positions that I was really bad at.
Yes, with no support, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Here's your new role. Here's your new desk and office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the KPIs you need to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And the danger is, the hard part for anybody in that scenario is to say, I don't really know what I'm doing. I can't do this job, because there's pride, and obviously there's the fear of failure and everything else that goes with that. And eventually what happens is those people either end up with a stress-related disease that in some cases can be extremely serious, or they absolutely hate what they're doing. They gave 25 incredible years to a business, and a year after being promoted out of their ability zone, they resign and go and find a job doing what they were doing before they were promoted, which is so sad. But I like working with those people to give them the bits and pieces, help them understand the pieces they don't have in their quiver, so that they are then comfortable to take all of that technical ability they've got and then lead. There's that word again, become leaders and lead the team that they're in charge of into being more effective, more efficient, more engaged. Yeah, that's kind of the summary.
Yeah. And for those of you that are listening to Andy share that, all of these different things, if you're not able to put a tick next to what he's explaining, it may just be a very good indication that that's something that you need to put into your business. And it's such a great reminder for us as business owners, as we are expanding and looking at who can I promote, because we've got a need there. It's not just to grab someone that you think, well, I can shift them across. They're doing really well. As you've said, Andy, and we've mentioned before, that they're doing really well because they are in their sweet spot. Can you expand the role to take on that so that they can continue to work? And often, unfortunately, if we're not aware of that, we can derail our team because we don't have awareness and support. And I think this just really, as a leader, opens our eyes to the fact that create a culture in your business of open communication. If there is a question, not to look at that as, well, you don't really know your stuff. I interviewed on one of my other podcasts, Women in Leadership, someone from Asia, and they were saying a lot of in the Asian cultures, to have a question can often be looked at negatively because you don't know. Well, you know what, as a leader, we're not expected to know everything. In fact, get a great team around you who've got expertise in that, and then build everyone up, to support. So, let's just take away the whole fact that we need to know. We can find out, or we can hire people in to do that. But having an environment, I think, where we can have that open communication, no one's judged, but rather supported. All right, let's get you some support. Let's get you some coaching around that so you can develop that skill, that know-how, and then continue to implement that. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. We'll put all of the links on the show notes that people can get in contact with you to access our link, ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/TCE12. This is show number 12. And if you have been listening to the podcast, just for those of you listening or viewing today's interview, if you have been listening and you think, I have a message and I want to share that, but I'm not really too sure how to do that, maybe even with a podcast, one of the things that I've created for you is a mini training. You can access that annemariecross.com/mini training. What is included is my pre and my post-production workflow, all of the tools I use, all of the steps, including some low-cost and no-cost tools to get you started. Podcasting is such a great way. It doesn't have to be expensive if you just want to try it out and see it. A great way to share your message to people on a global scale. So go and grab access to that. Before we do go, Andy, one of the things that I've done for all of the other guests, and it would be honoured to do so with you as well, is just to say a word of prayer and blessing on you for the great work that you're doing. Am I able to do that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right. So let's pray. Say, Father, thank you so much for the conversation that we had today with Andy. All of those things are so important. And we're reminded that this success principle was something that Jesus said in the Bible. We're also reminded as Christian entrepreneurs that when we don't have an answer to a question is to turn to the word, because as Andy said, all of the success principles are there. And a reminder that it's so important to lean into you, spend time with you so that you can really speak into our lives. As we mentioned in today's topic, there are so many different areas that as Christian entrepreneurs, as leaders in our business, we get to impact not only the clients that we serve, but rather also to the people that we invite into our business. Allow us to know what our values, what our vision, and if we don't, is to really tap into the expertise of people such as Andy so that we do know. Because when we create a business that's thriving, that is generating income, we can contribute to the kingdom. There's so many different projects around the world that as Christian business owners, when we make a profit, we can contribute to that and bring other people, make jobs for people. So whilst we certainly don't want to focus only having the why on income, Lord, and it needs to be focused on you and what your word says and what you want for our lives and our business. But when we start to generate, when we lean into you and start to generate that income, the things that we can do and to give back into the kingdom is just incredible. So allow us to put plans into place, which is so important, to have that vision and mission, but also give space, time that you can put your supernatural into our natural, and we can just take that to the next level. Father, we thank you for this opportunity. Would you continue to bless Andy?
Thank you,
the
Lord.
work that he's doing with his team and with the network of other business owners. Can that continue to grow, Lord, that Christian business owners from all over the world come together, support one another, and just lift your name up whilst having fun and creating kingdom businesses. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Andy, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've just gotten goosebumps on goosebumps. So there's incredible things, I think, in store 2018. Yes, business can be difficult, but when we have the right people in place, when we've got that vision, and when we lean in and allow, bring it to God, he works alongside us, incredible things can happen. So anyway, thanks so very much for coming on the show, and for you listening. Please reach out to Andy. He's got such a wealth and background, and also find out a bit more about the network that you're creating too.
Well, I think just to mention that the Christian Business Network, which is www.christianbusinessnetwork.com, is a global organization designed to link Christian businesses worldwide, virtually for everything you just prayed about. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? This is a daily business show, so send them my way so that I don't have to go out looking. We'll just do them all.
Okay.
Continue. It is important. I think, we talked about values, and I think it's important as Christians that, if we want to support other Christian business owners, that there is a network there that we can reach out to as well. So thank you for that. And of course, we'll put the link in. Andy's already mentioned it, but we'll pop that in the show notes as well. Thanks once again, Andy.
Alrighty. Okay. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast, brought to you by BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. Changing the world one message at a time. Do you feel called to influence real change with your message? Join our supportive community of like-minded influencers, thought leaders, and disruptors at www.BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. That's BeTheDifferenceMovement.com.